Ex-prisoners of Reddit, what was the scariest thing you saw whilst on the inside? I did a couple years when I was young and dumb. The craziest shit I saw was actually in the county jail and not the state prison. The county jail was right on the Texas-Mexico border, so there were a lot of Hispanics. What was weird was the Hispanics born in America and the Mexicans from Mexico absolutely hated each other. I saw a Hispanic from Texas heat up a bowl of water until it was boiling in the microwave. We had microwaves in the tank. And he then proceeded to throw the boiling water on a Mexican from Mexico's face and then beat the ever-loving shit out of him. That dude's screams will haunt me forever. I also saw a guy take a blade from a small pencil sharpener, tie it to a toothbrush and then slice a guy's face from ear to ear while he was sleeping. The guy lived, but it looked like a freaking murder scene. A friend of mine did a short stint. From what he told me, he was supposed to get paperwork detailing his charges before he got to prison, but did not. This made the other prisoners suspicious as they believed he was a snitch, was trying to hide that fact from them, and they threatened to beat him. An old acquaintance of his was in there and assured my friend that he had nothing to worry about as they had been threatening him for months and nothing had happened. That night while my friend was making his bed, a few prisoners ran into his acquaintance's cell and beat him to within inches of his life. They were bouncing the guy's head off of the concrete to the point that my friend could hear it. My buddy says that's the moment that scared him straight. Not me, but my husband was in prison as a young adult. He said that they had a way of checking your ego in the spot he was at. The toughest guys would come up to you on your first day and ask how many push-ups you could do. If you were smart, you would just sorta blow it off or laugh it off and move on. If you were a stupid show-off or had something to prove, you would claim a large number or talk yourself up. If you did that, then they would be all friendly and be like, oh, let's see it, so the poor guy would do as many push-ups as they could. The tough guys would gas the new guy up, acting friendly, pushing him to do more. They acted impressed and joked around. Then as soon as the new guy had done as many push-ups as possible, they would jump him and beat him up. He would be helpless to resist because he had maxed himself out on push-ups. Afterwards, any guy with an ego was normally really quiet for the remainder of their stay. I spent a couple weeks in county jail. On the first day, when we were all being processed into the facility, strip, bend over, spread your cheeks, and cough. We were told very succinctly to never ever even joke about suicide while in the facility. Kinda like how you just don't say bomb on an airplane anymore. By day 3, I had a good understanding of the other guys I was locked up with. I was physically the biggest of the white guys in our pod, so all the white kids huddled around my table at meals to keep away from the Hispanic folks and the black folks. Yes, there are 3 teams in correctional facilities whether you like it or not. There was one kid in the group that seemed underdeveloped mentally. He probably had a learning disability among other things, but he essentially acted like a 12-year-old. I knew early on he was going to get himself in trouble because he never stopped talking or moving. And he was rubbing everyone the wrong way. I tried to tell him to chill out and be invisible, but he was not understanding what I was telling him. I had been there a week. When the 12-year-old finally lost his cool completely, he was in the shower, singing and joking around, putting on a performance that went too far, and he pooped on the floor as a joke. After the other guys in the shower grabbed their towels and ran, he proceeded to kick the poop all over the walls and into the other shower stalls. I didn't shower for the rest of my stay. Truth be told, it turned into a big scene, and then when the trustees came in to clean up the poop all over the walls, it turned into an even bigger scene. The whole time, the 12-year-old was locked in a cell near the showers, laughing and joking as other inmates had to clean up his poop and make the shower area sanitary again. State-run facilities have standards after all. The next day, everyone was looking at the 12-year-old with hate in their eyes. Kinda like Gomer Pyle in Full Metal Jacket. Everyone missed their showers the day prior due to the poopsident, and then the kid was still up to his antics at breakfast the next day. Everyone got really cold toward him, even openly mean. I'll admit, I started ignoring him completely after the poop. It took him a day or 2 to realize he was hated by all, and then his personality changed dramatically. He became sad, despondent, and started talking to the COs because the other inmates wouldn't talk to him anymore. He fucked up and told the COs that he should just harm himself and make everyone happy, and that was all it took. They dragged out the blue burrito. This is the scariest thing I had seen in jail. The blue burrito was a 10-foot long blow foam mat, like you would use in gym class, with 2 12-foot long red belts attached. They laid it out on the floor, forced the 12-year-old to lay on the mat, and then they rolled him up with his arms at his sides into the blue burrito. The two long red belts clipped together at the top and bottom of the burrito, keeping it all nice and tight. This was the suicide protocol at the jail. No counseling, no medical ward. You lose the ability to move. They put that poor bastard in the burrito around 8 p.m. dragged him into his cell and left him laying on the floor, wrapped up tight, until breakfast the next morning, around 8 a.m. The child molesters and gang members in protective custody get to eat breakfast first. Imagine being unable to move, barely able to breathe, with no end in sight for 12 hours on the floor of your 8x8 cell. My cell was up above his, and I heard him weeping and moaning in agony all night. He didn't say a word to anyone, or look anyone in the eye for that matter for the rest of the time I was there. One night in the blue burrito broke him. Okay, so I got a DUI in a neighboring county. I was going through a rough patch in life, so I said fuck it and never showed up to court. I figured catch me if you can. Well, fast forward a couple months and I end up getting into some shit and charged in my county. Boom, extradition. I end up in that neighboring county's prison. Rough stop to put it lightly. So one night I'm in my cell, which was on the second tier, second floor, and they bring some new guy in. Well, this guy keeps asking for shit, phone calls, food, and just generally being a pain in the ass. So at one point a CO comes up to talk to him. The CO leaves and this guy is freaking out. He's screaming and yelling and banging on the door to his cell. He called me and he just keeps screaming this and the banging intensifies. It's now boom 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 with him still screaming. Now, when the doors are closed and locked, there's about a 2-inch gap between the door and the wall. That's what he was screaming through. I see a CO walk up and here he called MEANI. The CO had walked up, waited for him to scream and sprayed mace down the man's throat through the crack and just walked away. So for the next 45 minutes I can hear this guy gasping for air. It didn't sound good. They finally came back, drug him out of his cell and down the hall to this little shower. They cuffed him to the shower and ran water on him for a couple hours, gasping the whole time. They finally ended up taking him to the hospital. Not a prisoner, but an ex-guard. I worked at a juvenile detention facility in New Mexico. The absolute scariest thing I ever saw was a young boy, 9 years old, booked in for murdering both of his parents. There was nothing there. I failed to call this thing even human. I looked into this child's eyes and felt more fear than I ever have to this day. This was no child, it was a monster. Pure evil, condensed and given human form. And to clarify, I have booked and looked after murder suspects before. It was nothing new. But this kid was different. Very different. He never broke any rules and always followed commands but never, ever spoke unless directly asked something. And then it was curt, short, just to answer a question. He never cried, either, which is highly unusual for a 9-year-old kid in jail. He was eventually tried and transferred to mental facility, but I'll never forget the kid's eyes. It haunts me to this day. A family member of mine did time in the early 80s and told me a story about a well-known pedophile being brought into the prison. He had some wild stories about his time in there, but this one seemed to stick with me and he said it was one of the worst things he had seen. The guards brought the pedophile out to the main outdoor area where quite a few prisoners were congregating. After uncuffing the pedophile, the guard pushed him out into the crowd and let everyone know that he had just been convicted with the rape, torture and murder of a 5-year-old boy. The guards then turned around and it was a free-for-all on the pedophile. He exited in an ambulance, not sure if he died or just severely messed up. Keep in mind this story was told to me years ago. Not me, but my friend's dad is a retired CO and he said he's seen some shit in the prisons. He told us this story about a sex offender who got booked. Everyone knows that sex offenders aren't looked very highly upon in prison, so things already weren't looking too good for him. Well, apparently Mr. Touchy opened his mouth that he was in for diddling kids. My friend's dad said within seconds, the other inmates jumped him and started beating the shit out of him. He said the animosity of it was insane. They were holding him down while another one stomped on his head and face. They would throw him face first into the wall, then punch the back of his head so his face kept getting pounded into the concrete. Apparently at one point, one of the inmates jumped on his chest and you could audibly hear all his ribs break. My friend's dad was called in to break it up and he said as he was approaching the stomping ground, he could see the sex offender trying to crawl away only to be yanked back by the ankles and have the beating resume. They eventually broke it up, but according to my friend's dad, the sex offender died on the way to the hospital.